You're listening to The Q Switch with your host, Spence.
Welcome, one and all to the Q Switch Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Spence, and the mission of this show is to tackle subjects currently impacting ophthalmology, where we invite the innovators, the thought leaders, and forward thinkers shaping the field of ophthalmology to discuss their unique perspectives. So let's jump right in. Sometimes the best career move is one you never planned to make. My guest on today's episode of the Q Switch, titled Stand Up, Step Up, and Scale Up, proves that point better than anyone I know. Dr. Walia, believe it or not, was once a stand-up comedian, which means he may be the only ophthalmologist who understands how to land both a punchline and a PanOptix Pro. But what started as a so-called Plan B turned into something pretty remarkable. Dr. Walia grew up in Houston after being born in Denver, attended medical school at Texas Tech, completed residency at the renowned Emory Eye Center, and further sharpened his cataract surgery expertise through an advanced training at Harvard Medical School. Today, he's the owner, CEO, and medical director of West Coast Eye Institute in Bakersfield, California, where he has transformed what was once a single location practice into a growing multi-location regional eye care platform. Along the way, he's incorporated advanced surgical technology, incorporated an office-based surgery center, built a fellowship program bridging private practice and academics, and assembled a multidisciplinary clinical team focused on delivering high-level care to the Central Valley community. And somehow, he still finds time to root for his beloved Denver Broncos. So today, we're going to talk about vision in every sense of the word. Clinical vision, business vision, leadership vision, and how sometimes the backup plan ends up being the best plan of all. Dr. Walia, it's great to have you on the Q-Switch Conversations. Welcome to the show.
Well, Spence, I think that was a very nice way to give my introduction, man. I should record that and play that for my wife on our next family argument. Makes me sound very, very accomplished. So thank you for having me, man. And it's good to see you again. I mean, this is the rare time. When I was searching through my emails for your name, I saw something back in 2017, and so it's been a long time for us to reconnect and to get to know each other, man.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about this podcast is that we reach out to potential guests that a lot of them I had worked with when I was at Alcon many years ago, much like yourself. So it's several reunions along the way. So it's been great to be able to reconnect and see where those folks have come in the time since we've worked together in the past, typically during the residency or fellowship.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, part of the preamble that you gave me, I should give you the credit for any of the phaco stuff that I do, man.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the part of the story that people always find fascinating. Before medicine, you were actually doing stand-up comedy, and ophthalmology was essentially a plan B. Looking back now, what did comedy teach you about reading people, connecting with an audience, and communicating clearly, skills that actually translate surprisingly well into medicine?
Yeah, it's a unique story, but when I lived it or when I live it now, it doesn't seem that odd to me. But when you say it out loud, yeah, it's kind of different. I'm Indian by descent, so my plan B was still never not medicine. It was always medicine, right? I mean, I don't think my Indian parents would have been thrilled if I kept with the stand-up comedy career back in the day. But there's a couple things I did learn along the way, and they still really 100% apply. When you go onto a stage, you don't get to really make that one-on-one connection like you do with the patient, but you have to be able to command the entire room for kind of all people of interest, that people that don't want to be at your show, people that do want to be at your show, the friend that just got dragged out there and they had no interest to want to laugh today. They've had a hard day. And so you're trying to break or chip that ice away to kind of defrost the situation and to say, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to have a decent time. And I'll drive the car. Hopefully you're the passenger and we'll have a good time on this car ride together. And I still probably use that exact analogy when I do cataract surgery, because a lot of our stuff is done in conscious sedation. So I'll say, hey, it's okay if you're nervous. If one of us is nervous, it's better you than me. And so I'll drive the car, you're the passenger, enjoy the music, and I'll try to keep the chit chat going. About 7 minutes, we'll be all done. So that connection is still the same. It's a different platform. And, surprisingly, I think people just want to know that there's a genuine person on the other side of the curtain, no matter what stage you're on, whether it's in a patient room or it's actually telling jokes.
Mm-hmm. Well said, man. Because I think that I think the term is like bedside manner, and I think the very best doctors in terms of patient care and interaction have a really natural ability to embrace the situation not only for themselves but for the patient and make them feel like, as you said, in the end, everything's going to be okay. And your journey didn't exactly follow the traditional pre-med script either. You studied marketing at University of Texas, worked a full-time job while in school, and even spent some time coaching with the Texas Longhorns before pursuing medicine. So, when you think about the way you run your practice today, where do you
Mhm.
see the earlier experiences shaping your leadership style and your business mindset?
Yeah, all right. So yeah, I'm a traditional in the route that I took, and a traditional, I guess, in the educational degrees, I guess, that got me to where I am. You know, I was a marketing major. I got my MBA, and I've always been kind of athletically inclined. Maybe not personally, as you can tell from my great physique right now, Spence, from this portion up. I've always liked to coach. I've always liked to play sports, and I believed in the idea of a team since really early. And I think that's always been an important part of it when you go through getting an MBA. I mean, literally the MBA degree, which I mean, I don't know how many other listeners will agree or disagree. It doesn't have much value as just the sheet of paper. The idea of getting a degree is about getting in a room with people that are like-minded, that can maybe advance you professionally and that you can bounce ideas off of, right? So, I mean, we don't look at it as a team accomplishment sometimes. You look at it as an individual accomplishment. Like my degree from Emory is mine. But really, I mean, I had, really good five co-residents that, I still every now and then get to talk to, or I'll see at a conference, and it brings up the good memories. And so it's a team accomplishment. So that philosophy, I think that's really has been, um, quintessential for what the practice has done that I've been able to lead. I mean, I try to make sure that our team knows from the first person to check in to the last person to check out, not from just a patient standpoint, but from the teammates that actually clock in, clock out. We couldn't do it without any one of them. We couldn't do it if any one of them tries to have a day off or take it a little bit easier. And sometimes you do have those moments and you have to pick up for your teammates. I think those life lessons early on about being a team really have been my professional blessing.
Well, good, man. Well said. So you mentioned the MBA just a bit ago. How much has that business training influenced your way, the way you've approached building and scaling West Coast Eye Institute compared with someone who might have approached it purely from a clinical side?
It's a great question. I think that there's obviously some intrinsic thing that I don't realize that I probably have learned along the way. So I can't say specifically, oh yeah, this is a great example of, hey, the value of my MBA came in this scenario. I
Hmm.
think when I think of how to scale, like I'll be transparent here. Our practice has grown from one location to five in about 3 years. And we did that without any outside funding. So we have not taken any outside funding. And I think that's a very atraditional for the idea of being an MBA degree holder or kind of
Hmm.
really business mindset. There's a lot of leverage that goes on to get you where you want to be. So we did it a little atypically. But I do think, myself having a business background, and then I also have a really good team of, teammates and board members that I would really lean on and listen to. And I think putting the right people in the right seat to drive their portion of the conversation, it worth its weight in gold. And I think that's probably the biggest thing of the MBA and the business background that you have, that you can't be an expert on all topics, right? I can't be an expert in ophthalmology and in finance and in real estate acquisition and in, service line development. So why not stick to what I do know best to make sure it all works together as a team, make sure everything complements each other, that you're not developing a product line or, hey, we want to move into contact lenses. And you're like, what? We're a refractive surgery center. Like this kind of eats into what really we're at the heart of, getting people away from contacts and glasses.
Hmm.
You're going to cannibalize yourself. I think trusting your teammates has been probably the biggest lesson I got from the MBA. And I definitely use that every day. Maybe not so much the dollars and cents.
Let's shift to the environment where you built all of this. Bakersfield has quietly become one of the fastest growing cities in California and sits among the top 10 largest in the state. What do you see in that community that made you realize there was an opportunity to build something special and significant there?
Oh man. All right. So when I first graduated, I'm from Texas. I've always envisioned going back to Texas. In my mind, that's where my parents still are. That's my hometown by trade or by signature, I guess you'll say. But my wife's family was in California. And so we took a house vote. I said Texas, she said California. Here I am, Spence. So the vote should have been 1-1, but I don't know if you know how that works. I was outvoted. And so here we are in California. I think transparently, I didn't know much of the city when I first started to look at it. I think when I started to look at it and started to dig a little deeper, I saw the potential of what I can become here. And then also, I'll say I didn't necessarily start the process with the ambition to say I would become a part of a team that will hopefully become the bedrock of eye care in Bakersfield. I thought this was a great city to grow professionally, right? I didn't want to leave training and become so niche that I don't do any intravitreal injections, and then 5 years down the road, I feel like I'm already outdated. Or I don't do any MIGs, and then all of a sudden, the world of MIGs moves so fast that you're ancient by 6 years out of training. And so that's what this city afforded me professionally. And then when I realized that was the landscape that I really loved, and there are a lot of like-minded people like this, that the city really wanted to grow, and just a perfect storm led to each other.
Being from Southern California myself, I grew up there from as a little kid, and Bakersfield was always kind of like podunk, Central Valley, and it was like out in the middle of nowhere. But in the 20, almost 30 years since, people are leaving areas like major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
going to places where there's more wide open spaces, your neighbors right up on you. And as I said earlier, because of that, it's become one of the fastest growing cities in the state. And you inserting yourself into that community at the right time, you're growing right along with it, which I think helps with the opening multiple locations to serve them. Is that right?
yeah. Oh, definitely right. I mean, so for anybody that's not from Southern California, not from California, we're in kind of the agricultural valley that's about 2 hours north of LA. So, right, like you said, great Spence. Like when you grew up, you just thought of here, we're a bunch of farmers, and it's a lot of cows and a lot of stuff that goes on, and we don't really want to drive into Bakersfield. We drive through Bakersfield.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I've heard that a lot. I'm biased. Obviously, I live in the city, and I'll be the biggest champion of the city possible. My office, one of them is right across the street from my kid's school, and I get the opportunity to drop my kids off and be in the office all within 6 minutes from my house. I mean, I don't spend a lot of car time, and I think that was a part of my analysis of how I can be professionally productive. Right? If I spend 15% of my day in a car where I can't do something else, that's a bad use of 15% of my vital time right now to do something productive for me professionally. And I didn't want to do that. And so, yeah, it's a great city. I mentioned teammates that I have that I get to work with. Probably two of my closest teammates that I work in the office with are 3 houses down from me. So we see each other. Their kids are the same age as mine. We all have same things. So when we're sitting out watching my son's basketball game, I mean, there's always some work chit chat going on there too. So it's we have the most informal, formal board meetings ever, and that's pretty lucky, man. So yeah, Bakersfield's a great city. Spence, next time you're in Southern California, I'm gonna throw the lasso really hard out there and try to bring you in here, man, to stop by.
Will do. And I think since we're kind of on the subject, you mentioned a moment ago, but Bakersfield is also uniquely economically, it's agricultural and energy based, where and those are the two biggest diverse drivers of the local economy, agriculture and energy. How does that shape the patient population you serve and the kinds of eye conditions you see and the way you think about delivering eye care in that community?
Yeah, okay. I think Bakersfield is uniquely similar to a lot of really guess metropolitan cities, maybe not cosmopolitan cities. So think of it like Dallas, but in a much smaller scale, right? And like you said it really well, Bakersfield is really big. It's just really next to some giants, right? When you stand next to LA, you look tiny, right? When you stand next to San Francisco, we're pretty small, right? So it's just again a relative scale. But if you take Bakersfield and put it anywhere else in any other heartland part of the city, it would be the largest city in that state for a good portion of the states in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And I do say like the reason I bring Dallas into that scenario, Dallas, while it has a lot of great industries, there's the blue jean millionaire. That's a lot of what we have out here in Bakersfield. You never know who's walking through the door, and you'll be surprised because they own 3 oil rigs. Because there's a lot of oil presence that's been in Bakersfield for generations. And you're like, well, I still remember this. When I first moved out here, I felt bad for this guy that had a corneal ulcer, and we had some antibiotics. So like, hey man, take some samples, like go for him. And then politely on the way out on the third time, like, one of my MAs was like, you don't need to give him samples. I'm like, well, he needs it. He's got an ulcer. And she's like, well, yeah, yeah, but just so you know, like he owns, the company that made the baby carrot. Like that's him. I was like, what do you mean made the baby carrot? Like he really made the baby carrot. That's how that works. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess, you know, consider that my tip to the cap then. I eat a lot of carrots. Good, thank you very much. Um, so yeah, it's a different city, but it's always fun because you just never know who walks through the door.
For people who may only know Bakersfield by reputation, what makes the community special from your perspective, and where are some of the challenges? What are some of the challenges that come with serving a rapidly growing region like the Central Valley?
I think Bakersfield. I'll tackle the first one first, Spence. What makes Bakersfield really special? I think it's these biggest small town you can imagine. That I still get an opportunity to provide a really good quality of care, and our patients have a relationship with the practice. And I always say our goal of what we try to do is to create an environment, right? I feel like a lot of us in the world now, we get up, we go through things, but we don't have a sense of a community or a village that we're a part of. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that sounds kind of hokey, but realistically, I think our patients probably believe in the fact that we are a part of their community and they're a part of our community. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really this like family environment, small town feel with large demographics. I mean, we have international firms, we have companies that are out here that, like I said, really influence globally a lot of economy out there for things. But so I think that's the charm of Bakersfield. The challenge to Bakersfield, Bakersfield, I think, does have an income disparity gap that is, present like a lot of the country. There are some fields that have been around for a long time and they have done really well and they really help prosper their sense of team for that industry. And then there's a big gap because, oil is not necessarily an innovative field in this city. It's still in its innovation is outside the city of Bakersfield. So we're still, you know, drilling crude oil out here and things like that. So there's a big gap between, I guess, the access to information, education, and the income disparity that makes you have to target kind of how you treat patients. You can't treat everybody the same way. And that's probably the biggest challenge in the city that we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you joined West Coast Eye Institute, it was a single location. And since then, you've expanded it to multiple, I think you said 5 sites across the region. So when you started planning for expansion, what were the strategic decisions that mattered most? Geography, access to care, referral patterns, demographics? How did you decide where and how to grow?
No, it's a great question. We planned our growth kind of really on a couple of pillars. Number one, where are our patients coming in from, right? And I think if you don't overly complex the process, right? If you're a Nike shoe company and you make shoes, you always want to be innovative on shoes. You don't really need to become innovative in, you know, shoes that stimulate your brain and things like that. That's not a knock to Nike. If anybody from Nike listening, I'm a big fan of your stuff. Wearing some Nike shorts right now, I guess you can say. But but all right, either way, right? Stick to your lane. And when we wanted to grow and when I wanted to grow, I wanted to just stick to our lane. What we do really well is communicate to patients, provide quality of care kind of across the board. And I think in the highest degree of surgical subspecialty. So we put a lot of innovation into our surgical realm by offering the office-based surgery, which is the only one in the entire city of Bakersfield. It allows people agnostic of their insurance to get access to care without these really long delays that sometimes happen at a surgery center, right? When your audience listens to this, we all will go through this. And if they're going through training, this is probably one of the things that they'll learn after they get out of training. You can only be as good as the people that are around you that let you be as good as you can be. So I'm a surgeon by trade, and my surgical time is dictated by an ASC. And no matter how much of a voice I have at that table, there's other specialists at that ASC. So, I mean, you can only do so much with your product because it's controlled by somebody else. So we brought that in house. right? We brought a lot of the stuff that takes a lot of the decision factor that we couldn't control at the original onset in-house, and we put it as close as we can to our patients, right? So they don't have to drive far. They don't have to make it an inconvenient trip. If you're coming in with low vision, it's hard for you to convince your daughter or your son to take off every Tuesday for 6 weeks for the next 6 months to get intravitreal injections, right? That's not good medicine. So we try to bring in what we do really well that we didn't have control of in-house, and we try to bring the house as close as we could to the patient.
Nice. Let's talk about growing pains for just a second. So, because growth always sounds great when you tell the story after the fact, but
Yeah,
in the moment, it's usually a bit messy. What were some of the hardest growing pains you encountered during the expansion, and what do you know now that you wish you would have had known back then?
Man, that's a really good question, and I probably hopefully ask him that again in 5 years when we grow, and 5 more years when we grow, span. So it's one of those things that's easy to say. And look, I'll say the growing pains that I think that it's really hard to keep the same level of passion to all areas of what you do at all times, and I think that's really important, right? I think I drink a lot of coffee, and there's a lot of Celsius and Red Bull out there that pumps my system, Spencer. So I have a motor that I think is probably the best suited for me. Probably drive my family nuts. But like I said, my staff grew from 7 to like 30, and I used to have a really intimate connection with my staff. Like I knew my staff's kids' names. I knew where they were going to school. I knew their kids' birthdays. Like that's what we started with. And so when you grow and then you're like, well, let's make sure we think about the patient, and then let's think about, hey, how do we bring in surgical specialty, and now we bring in other providers. You forget, like, oh yeah, I've added now 15 other staff members, and gosh, I don't know much about them. So I think there's that. You have to understand and be okay with your bubble will always be inflated, but like a balloon, sometimes the air pushes to one side, not the other, and that's going to be okay. Just take your grip off of it and the balloon recalibrates. You'll be okay. So I think that's one. Don't always rush it, and be okay with kind of being able to focus on something in the short run. That's something I definitely learned, and I wish I would have learned earlier. Um, but like I said, Spence, you ask me this question again in maybe 6 months, I'll give you a different answer again.
One of the hallmarks of your practice is a strong commitment to advanced technology. Premium cataract surgery, MIGS, you mentioned refractive surgery is in your wheelhouse, and advanced diagnostic tools and equipment. When you're evaluating new technology, how do you decide what truly is going to improve patient outcomes versus what might be just the next new shiny object?
So I mentioned I have a great team around me. One of my teammates, his dad used to be an engineer for GM. He was like a chemical engineer, not a chemical engineer, some sort of mechanical engineer that was a part of the service line and product line for when a vehicle got developed. And his advice one time, so we're sitting, we're having a dinner, and he's like, never buy a car on its first year of release. So, like, if the Tesla came out with a brand new Model Y, that's not the year to get it. Wait till about 6 months to 8 months after the service line and it's serviceably available to go ahead and get it. And because, like, there's always things we don't realize that people will do with the device that we have to change because of how it's drawn up in a lab versus its real world application. And so that's a car model, but I'll say I took that to heart, and I try to kind of really apply to. I don't want to bring in anything into the practice that I don't know if it has proven technology. Like there's some great new devices that provide similar modalities of things that we do, but slightly different. I'll pick an example like the DSLT. I think it works great, and I think it has a fit, but we already have a really good replacement to, or I guess the original onset, which is SLT, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to convince me to go into this new pattern, I have to see that there's value for the patient, and then there's value for the practice, right? Like really, what did we enhance? We're all comfortable with SLT. We all know how to use it. There isn't a learning curve to use it. There isn't a new device that takes up more footprint that we could have used for a research room. So that's probably the longest winded answer I could have given you, Spence. So I apologize.
No,
I
no, no,
apologize, but
not at all. All good
I'll,
stuff.
I'll say anything I bring in, I think the point is, does it actually do something better? Does it actually do something valuable for either the provider or the patient? We were quick to jump on the 4D Alcon Unity cataract surgery.
Yes.
Um, And I think it's been a great addition, right? And so we're thrilled with that. So, that technology has been around for decades. It's just oscillating a bit different. I mean, manually, I've been moving my hand for a long time. So now I get to take a little bit of a break and let the machine do the work for me. So um, we just try to figure out what really will make a difference.
Well, good. Well, I think those are the proper metrics to be looking at. The value that brings, it doesn't make sense from a financial perspective, and what are the outcomes like? And is it better than, or make a significant upgrade from what you're doing now?
Yeah.
And is it
Yeah.
worth changing some of your practice habits and patterns? I think those are all great metrics to take a look at, because that changes the way not just you but your team interacts, and not to mention the end person, the patient that you're working on.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, if you think about it too, like again, these other models outside in the ophthalmic world, right? Like, I mean, pretty much every food industry service out there, food chain has kind of consolidated their menu. They haven't expanded their menu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Raising Cane's, Dave Hot Chicken, the two large fast food chains that grew in the last 5 years to
Mm-hmm.
10 years. I mean, they're not predicated on serving 20 options. They've got two, and that's all that they do. So when you bring in a service line, you really got to think like, am I expanding the service line for actual productivity, or am I just going to cloud the voice again because patients don't know the difference between an SLT and an ESLT? And now
Mm-hmm.
I have to have that conversation because I'm bringing in new modalities, but it's not like I got rid of my SLT. Well, which one's the better fit for them? Am I going to have that conversation? Is it right to have the conversation? Try the DSLT first, and if it can't recognize the limbus, then move to SLT. But then you have to explain why we jump back and forth. You know, I don't know anything about my car. I just know when I drop it to the shop, it should run. I think a lot of patients need that too. Sometimes you bring in too much, it's too much information. We don't need 45 menu options. Just make sure you do the right menu option.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you also made the decision to incorporate an office-based surgery center. You mentioned it a bit earlier. And so what drove that decision, and how has it changed both patient experience and the efficiency of your surgical clinic flow?
So I think the two best thing we've done in the last maybe 3 years, one of them has been the OBS, the Office-Based Surgery Center. Personally, it's a prideful moment because my Office-Based Surgery Center is actually named after my mom and dad.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
saw,
Very
so
cool.
it's a really cool moment that I got to share with them at a grand opening. They didn't know it was going to be there, and it's a very cool moment. So personally, there's a lot of joy to be able to open that. Professionally, I mean, I think it's really, like I said, changed the way we get to do what we do because we have ownership of how we do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? There isn't this time lapse or gaps that make patients wait for 3 months, not because I can't, it's just because the surgical volume is too full, right? So let's say you're full at the ASC, you've got to schedule somebody 3 months out. That's a tough way to do medicine and to sleep at night to say like I want to do more, but no matter what I do, I can't because after I'm done, the my OR is taken by a GI guy. Well, that's not the case here. So the OBS really allows you to kind of have ownership on that. The second thing I think the OBS really does, it's only eye specific. So everybody in the OBS, I mean, our circulator knows more about astigmatism than I would say hands down than any circulator in the country. And I'll take that as a challenge. I mean, outside of me already insulting Nike in this conversation, now I've done all circulators out there. You know, but I'll say that like, they know what an astigmatism is. They know how to read the biometry because that's all they do. And there's no kind of like, well, I've got to also get this, endoscopic tube over here. No, no, no. We don't do any of that stuff. So it really does, I think, enhance the way I get to practice medicine because I get to do it with people that just talk eyes with me all day long. And I couldn't be more thrilled about that. I get to do it in a way that I could get to control the speed of which I can provide care instead of a 3 month turnaround. Sometimes now it's a 2 week turnaround. Um, the biggest hurdle is obviously then you have to have patients understand the difference between an in-network and an out-of-network facility. And it does bring some headaches. Like you said, with all growth, there's growing pains. But it's definitely been the growing pain that's really been personally rewarding, professionally rewarding. And I think the staff has also made the surgical skill at the highest quality now.
Well, anybody who I've spoken to has made the decision to add an OBS like you have very similar commentary and thoughts that like there's a certain liberation, freedom, and agency that they can now have to be able to control the elements that they couldn't before. Time being probably the biggest
Yep.
one, and
Yep.
then being able to really silo and specialize. And when someone comes to you, they know that it's all going to be all about eyes. You're not going to think about any other orthopedic or any GI stuff. It's just eyes, and I think that really allows patients to understand where they're going and that they're not going to get led down a path where like I could end up in a surgery suite where they may be working on my knee,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
rarely happens, I'm sure, if at all. I say that as a joke. I think there's a certain amount of comfort from the patient's perspective, knowing that they come to you and they're just going to one spot. Oftentimes, the surgery center being maybe quite a distance or maybe complicated to get to, where patients may not be able to find or get to it easily, or maybe incorporate a caregiver or a loved one, but being in the same place where they went for their clinical diagnostic and assessment is the same place they're going to come to see you and get their surgery performed. I think there's some comfort and confidence that from the patient perspective.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we've asked patients, and I think that's the better voice to ask than to ask me because, again, my bias is I'm on this side of the coin. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the patient will, by far and away, say they like the fact that there's familiarity, right? The surgery coordinator is still there on the day of surgery because they're probably the second face of surgery, right? Like, hopefully, I'm face number one. They're surgeon. They have a belief in what I do. But then they spend a lot of time with the coordinator to schedule and to sign up surgery and to really understand the pre-drops, the post-drops, all this stuff that often gets done with the surgical team. And so after surgery, when they see that same face, like, oh, great, I'm glad you're here. And they know her by name. So I completely agree with you on that front. And then if I can add one more selfish, personal kind of enrichment moment here, our OBS has a lot of glass. So there's a lot of glass windows so you can look in and out of the OBS. And I think that's pretty common in a lot of places. But I have three kids that are somewhere in the photographs behind me. My daughter is 7, my son's 5, and I have the youngest who's 3. I think all three kids have stood outside the glass and watched surgery in 3D. They get it. They know that I work for the things that we do in the house, and I mean I think that's pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe one of them will be a stand-up comedian, and I'll have to convince him to be an ophthalmologist. You just never know, you know.
So, as practices grow, the biggest challenge often becomes building the right team. How do you approach recruiting, training, and building a culture where everyone is aligned around delivering high-level patient experiences?
I've gotten really lucky. So I get to kind of sit at a table with a teammate, Julia Castillo. Julia is our COO, and she'd been at our practice for 27 years.
Oh, well, okay.
And as a compliment to her, once we transitioned from its predecessor to myself, she saw the potential and the growth, and she was really excited for where she grew into that role. She didn't always sit in the same seat. I think she started first in kind of the optical world as an optician, then moved up to lead in the glasses sales, and then moved into kind of a hey, she's going to be onboarding me as a provider, as the kind of liaison, so to speak. And then it's just grown from there. So there's a lot of stability at our table. I do think stability is really important. You've got to have teammates that are not just constantly revolving in and out. So myself, Julia, the next teammate's been there for about 6 to 8 years. And then kind of the same thing 4 or 5 years. So there's a lot of stability at the table. So when we bring in somebody new, they know what they're walking into. And we, again, in my sports mind, I'm a big believer in, raising talent, not supplementing talent. So what I mean by that is a lot of teams that really make dynasties grow their talent. They draft well, they train well, they teach well, they do the
Mm-hmm.
thing that you don't see really well for 2 or 3 years. And then they pop like the New England Patriots or the Oklahoma City Thunder, and hopefully you've got a dynasty, right? And that's what people talk about. Whereas if you hire in some of the help to help kind of do the patchwork, there isn't the same sort of sentiment on where the practice should go. And that's a great way to grow. And I'm not saying it's not. It's just you might get your quick growth, but without sustainable growth, right? You might win a championship, but we're not
Mm-hmm.
in it for one. We want six, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we bring in the talent that knows that there's a vertical climb. All of our MAs that start, they know that there's a shelf life, kind of like a law firm, that they want to grow into the next realm, which is then billing, and then they go into research, and then they go into the surgical understanding, and then they can lead a clinical site and things like that. So we've gotten pretty lucky. and we've gotten great stability at our leadership. That's, I think, by far and away number one.
I agree 100%. And again, nothing wrong with the acquisition and that growth, but when you have that
Yeah.
organic growth, the kind of growth that you're talking about, I've experienced it myself in my career. And those are some of the most memorable teams I've ever been on, and the most success I've ever had in my career is when I'm in and around a group like that, where there's chemistry. And I often say you can finish each other's sentences. And when you talk about sports analogies, again, sports guy myself, that here in Miami, we have the Miami Heat. They call it the Heat culture, and it's known throughout the entire league. Eric Spoelstra and what they've done. And he started out like in the film room, like breaking down film. Yeah. And he's, I think, the longest standing coach in the NBA. And he's still like, I think, just turned 40 something, or maybe 50. But
That
that
seem underaccomplished, man.
What's that?
He makes us seem underaccomplished.
Oh yeah. So and do they always win championships? No, but they are always competitive, always in the hunt. And like you said, they recruit well, they identify great talent, they develop internally, and they're always in the hunt. You always have to account and keep your eye on the Heat. And so again, not always going to be winning championships. That's unrealistic, but they're always in the hunt and give themselves a shot. And they are constantly looking for that talent that they can develop within the organization, and they farm that out to the league. When they develop somebody who's really good and they can't afford them, or they just want to go out and spread their wings and fly, so to speak, they let that person go because they're confident in their ability to identify, recruit, train, and develop a great talent around them to become part of that culture. And it sounds like that's what you're doing there at West Coast Eye Institute.
Yeah, and without making this a sports podcast, man, I completely agree. Like, I love the Miami Heat, right? I'm a big fan. Like I said, a big fan of sports. Eric Spoelstra came in as a film guy that moved up to head coach because Pat Riley was a film guy that moved up to head coach, right?
Did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's how it worked out in the Lakers. So he was the model that he's seen. He knew it could work. He believed in Eric Spoelstra. They don't fire quickly. They keep it around. I mean, yeah, we all know the Heatles, right? When there's LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And then if you think about a team that loses a tiny dynasty really quickly, all their players, within 4 years, they're back in the NBA Finals when they were playing the Lakers, right? And so that's impressive. Look at the Patriots, same sort of concept.
Yep.
Their head coach used to play for the team, right? And so there is a system. They've gone through ups and downs, but I completely agree with you. I mean, I think one thing, you asked me another question, I'll kind of revisit it. So, the stand-up comedy world is called the comeback, where you go back to the original joke. But you asked me, hey, what's something that's really important about your MBA background? I think you got to use a lot of life examples to build your medical practice. And so whether it's sports, whether it's fast food, we've talked about a lot of things that are not the I world, but those are really important life lessons that I think I have that help shape what we want to do.
One of the most interesting things about your clinical model is that you've incorporated nurse practitioners, which I haven't seen in all my travels since I've been doing this, in addition to optometrists in your clinical team. What role do the NPs play in your system, and how has that multidisciplinary approach improved your patient access, care continuity, and outcomes?
It's been great. So we have 3 nurse practitioners, and they're all local. They all kind of grew up in the city of Bakersfield. I couldn't say enough praise about each of them individually and then collectively as a group. They bring in a group mentality. We brought them in all together at the same time, roughly, which was kind of a bigger gamble. But again, we wanted the culture that they grow together, right? You didn't want to bring in one nurse practitioner and let her get a 6-month lead, and then another one comes in, and then, they didn't kind of have a teammate to learn and grow with. Just like a residency program in a sense, right? Because in the nurse practitioner world, there's a lot of ophthalmic exposure. So when they start, they do a extensive about 6 months training where they don't see a ton of patients. They engage with the patient, and it is a very stressful 6 months from an organizational standpoint when you bring in 3 providers that aren't seeing patients. It's not that there's a lot of, you can't see the stress on my hairline back there, but Spence, man, it was tough. But we believed in the model, and they really had realized that to be great at a craft, if you're sitting in primary care, and again, not a knock to all primary care doctors or providers or nurse practitioners out there, it's hard to be a specialist of everything at all time. You can't imagine to stay up to date on literature and just the quality of care that you can do. So they believed in the idea of learning an organ system really well. They know the eye really well, but then they also have the backing of myself, the optometrist, our retina guy, when it does get complex, right? So they really allow access to medicine to happen. And because they're family medicine trained, they look at some of the stuff that the ophthalmology team, doesn't really think about sometimes, like cleaning up the notes, making sure the medication makes sense. I had a patient that was on LASIK that's on dialysis, and they've been out of practice for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I'm going to wear that hat and I'll take ownership to it. I never asked them one time, why are you on the LASIK and diabetic if you're on dialysis? Your kidneys don't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did. And I was like, well, that's a great point. We probably should have noticed that. So they bring in a lot of their own value, and then they really brought in a lot of value to the patients because they look at it as a holistic point of view.
Another really interesting part of your story is the fellowship program you've created at West Coast Eye Institute. A lot of private practices talk about academic collaboration, but you've actually built a highly selective fellowship within private practice environment. Why was that important to you?
I said there's two things that I think we've done really well in the last 3 years, and OBS being one. I think our commitment to education was two. And I think that's how we've been able to grow the way that we have, because the product is an organ and you can't do that service without really knowing it well. So we committed to it internally. The fellowship was something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's an anterior segment fellowship. The biggest push for me personally is, like you mentioned, when I came out into the ophthalmology world, moving away from being a resident and a trainee to this side of the coin, I think there's a gap about how education gets done currently. There's a lot of my degree. I spent a lot of time getting my cases. I want to get my numbers. What's my case log? And then you get into the real world. You're like, well, I'm only as fast as my circulator and my scrub tech and the ASC. And so my case volume is predicated on three other individuals that don't really care about me if I don't care about them. And my turnaround time is 30 minutes. And you're like, I can do maybe 2 cases an hour. Oh, well, that's the gap of medicine, right? We go into ophthalmology and we stop learning everything else around the eye. So we built the fellowship to really kind of bring in the concept of leadership and how to practice ophthalmology beyond what we do as trainees. So
Mm-hmm.
our fellow has gone on, and she now leads it, and I think she's going to take over practice in Austin, Texas. And we're proud that she can do that after a year of really understanding it. Our fellow was a part of the conversation when we bought a new device, like you're talking about, how to look at an ROI to see if this is a good investment, if it's a good investment, not just on the intrinsic ROI, but also the extrinsic ROI. Your time as a provider, is it going to give you some of the lifestyle that you need that's going to open up something else for you to do, more time for, or more patient care? So the fellowship was built off that. I mean, and honestly, it's probably my happiest moments in the office is when I come in and we watch surgical videos together. Like, I mean, we do the stuff that makes it fun again, for sure. So it's been a great joy.
And when you're selecting a fellow for the program, what qualities are you looking for, and what makes someone the right fit for that experience, and what do fellows walk away with after completing the program that makes it unique?
The right fit for, I think, any fellow. I won't just say a West Coast Eye Institute fellow. I think any fellow is, hopefully they're getting to the difference, to understand again the difference of where they were to where they want to go, right? And I think that's a really developmental year to try to figure out where you want to be, not what you want to become, where you want to go. Again, in a sports analogy world, right? When you're in high school and college, you don't have to have the greatest team, because you could be a star and they'll find you if you have great stats and you can put up great numbers. And even if you're a mediocre team, like they'll find you as you're great, and you'll still get drafted and you'll make your goal. But then once you get to your professional setting, the goal simply becomes win championships. And I don't know our current fellowship programs to do that. It doesn't teach teammates to, hey, work as an interdisciplinary unit with ENT, with radiology, with neurology. So we try to do that. So we want fellows that I think are willing to understand where they want to be, not what they want to do through the fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I ask my hopefully applicants, like, what do you want out of your fellowship? I want to do more surgical volume. I want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, you're going to do surgical volume anywhere, man. You could just go get a job and do surgical volume. Why do you need a fellowship? But it's the idea, like, I want to be able to learn 3 or 4 more things. So this way, when I come out to the market, I can do that for the practice that I go to. Big
Mm-hmm.
fan of it. So that's what we look for sure.
When you look, say, 10 years down the road, what do you think ophthalmology and private practice eye care looks like, and how are you preparing your practice today so that you're ready for that future?
That's a good question. We at West Coast Science Institute have a separate sub-entity, which is an AI platform.
Interesting.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that one. That's episode 2, Spence.
The comeback.
Yeah, you see what I did there, man. You're a quick student, man. I tell you what, man. But yeah, so we have an AI branch of the practice that's developing AI hardware and software to kind of enhance the patient care experience.
Nice.
That will hopefully launch out sometime next year. So I think at the heart of what ophthalmology will be, it will still be about caring about people and doing surgery, right? That's what we are. We're surgeons of the eye, and I think that's what we will always do. I think the evolution of surgery will be small, minutia evolution until maybe we get these big advancements. I know that robotic surgery has happened. I don't know where that will fit in, and that's for mind brighter than myself. But I think the biggest change that we'll have is how we have to interact with human beings because the attention span changes, the want from what they would expect from the doctor, that their patient's access to information really, has revolutionized in the last 20 years. So I think that's going to change the most. And hopefully, as a practice, we do a good job bringing that conversation to the patient instead of the patient bringing it to us. And if we do that, then I think we're ready for the next, 10, 15 years of whatever the world will be.
Well said. And I asked that question in different forms, and AI is almost always either central or a part of that response. It's amazingly consistent that everyone's thinking about that. Well, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Obviously, it's in its infancy and still making its imprint on all of us. But how it impacts ophthalmology and medicine, I think that story still has yet to be truly written. But everyone is looking to read those chapters that are coming for sure. Before we wrap up, for the young ophthalmologist watching or listening to this show who sees what you've built and the kind of things you're doing, and they'd love to be able to follow in your footsteps someday, what advice would you give them?
Oh man, I look. Don't let this podcast fool you. I made a lot of silly decisions, some bad decisions. Not all footsteps are great coordination. Not every one you should kind of follow. But I think the biggest advice I'll say: you're gonna have a bad day. You're gonna have failures. You're gonna think of your practice about building this and building that, and then you'll have a tough case, and you're like, gosh, that one reminds me like what I'm doing is surgery for a human being. So, right, keep the main thing the main thing. Don't get distracted by the sides and all the other stuff on the plate. Keep the main meal the main meal. And I think that's really, really important. And then number 2 is in all my time, I've had a few that have reached out just on their own. And I think realistically, I did it when I was starting, and I still do now, just to start conversation. Because there's a lot of people that want to talk about the craft, but sometimes we don't get the engagement that we want from whatever it is. You're a private practice guy and you're by yourself. Pick up the phone, call. I mean, we're not elusive. I mean, I'm not elusive. I don't think their mind better than mine. I pick them up and I'm like, hey, I'd love to talk to you and pick your brain on this stuff. So pick up the phone, make mistakes. It's okay to fail, but keep the main thing the main thing. If you fail on other stuff, it's okay. If you fail at your craft, get better.
Nice. Finally, we can't end this conversation without going back to the origin story. You were once a stand-up comedian. So before we go, reach back into the vault and give us your best bit.
You don't have the explicit label on this podcast.
So you're that kind of comic, okay?
I bet no. All right, if I had to say my comedic style, there's a comedian called Cat Williams.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
Cat
God.
Williams, so very animated for anybody that doesn't know, very, very engaged in the audience. But there's probably some 4-letter words here and there that shouldn't be a part of the conversation. So, I'll pretend like I'll save that for episode 2, Spence.
Okay, all right. We'll get the explicit lyrics label put on it too.
Good idea, man.
So, Dr. Wheeler, this has been such a great and value-based conversation. I really do appreciate it. So for anyone listening who wants to learn more about West Coast Eye Institute, your fellowship program, or connect with you directly, where can they find you?
They can, first of all, it's bakersfieldlasik.com is our website. You can go to it and it can navigate you through to getting to me. And I'm happy to share my email as well. It's
Please do.
Walia, WALIA, MD as in medical doctor @gmail.com. So it's really not complex. Reach out anytime. I mean, I say it genuinely. I love the conversations. We have a couple medical students that help us with grand rounds and get presentations ready and do some of the clinical research that we do that are sub-eyes. We'd love to learn from you guys. I mean, sometimes I feel very old and you guys remind me it. So please do reach out and love to hear and learn from you.
Awesome. So to the audience, Dr. Walia's story is a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the greatest outcomes. What started out as a backup plan, sort of, turned into a career that blends elite surgical training, entrepreneurial vision, and a deep commitment to patient care. From transforming a single clinic into a growing regional practice to bringing advanced surgical technology and academic training to the Central Valley, Dr. Walia has shown what's possible when clinical excellence meets thoughtful leadership. Dr. Walia, thank you for joining us today on the Q-Switch. Really appreciate you having you on.
Spence, it's been a pleasure, man. It's great to reconnect too. And like I said, next time, don't drive through Bakersfield, drive in.
Indeed. So if today's episode has inspired you in any way, whether it's building a modern ophthalmology practice from the ground up, expanding access to care in a fast-growing community, investing in technology and infrastructure that evaluate both patient experience and surgical outcomes, or developing a multidisciplinary care team that includes optometrists and nurse practitioners, or even creating opportunities for education and mentorship through a private practice fellowship, reach out to Dr. Walia and keep the conversation going. I'll end like I always do, that the Q-Switch Conversations podcast is my way of giving back to an eye care industry and community that's shaped my career, my perspective, and my passion for what we do. This platform is truly built for you, the clinicians, the innovators, and change makers, redefining what's possible in our field. So if you have a fresh perspective, a unique experience, or know someone doing great things in eye care, I'd love to feature them on the show. You can hit me up on LinkedIn or drop me a line at d.spence@meridian.ch. And as always, we'd like to thank the folks at Riverside.fm and Passionate Media for making this show happen, and for our benefactors, Meridian Medical, for making it all possible. That's a wrap for this episode of the Q-Switch Conversations podcast. I'm Spence, and I am out.
You're listening to The Q-Switch with your host, Spence.